not boys anymore. The childhood dogs are both gone.
Yeah.
Two of them, brother and sister. And so now they're going, well, I guess we're adults now.
Yeah. No, it's sad. Something that is a part of your life in your house for 16 years. That's a long time.
Cherry on top.
What?
It's that animal hospital right here.
Yeah.
Left.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna come a different way.
Oh no. See, John has a heart for the dog. He has a heart for the dog in particular. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not nice. And we're getting, like I said, we're getting ready for a big week of Hanukkah stuff. We've got lots of stuff on the horizon. We have our Pasha Awards, which some of our Pasha Award winners are on right now. They're on they're in our group right now, but we have a Pasha Award, which I take no part in, by the way. I have no voting power in that. But I'm always excited to see who's going to be recognized, and the highest award in Temple Beth Ami. But yeah.
Can you hear anything?
No, I was just gonna message Mark that we have no audio.
Guys, can you hear us now?
I can hear you now.
Good. Yeah, like I said, we're having a little computer problem, but you missed us. So John was just telling us his dog passed away, or was
We heard about the
euthanized.
dog.
Yeah, so you heard that. That was not good, but
Sorry,
I
sorry
was
about
just
that,
showing.
John.
I was going to share the Hanukkah dates for the next coming years, because people are asking again how late it is, but there are going to be several times. Oh, look at these ads. I love them. I'll show you the dates. So this is this year, the 25th. So in 2016, it was the 24th. You can see a couple of years ago, it was right after Thanksgiving. November 28th was 2021. That's not even the earliest. I think like the year before it was, or 2 years before, it was like November 25th or 26th. But you can see in 2027, it's going to be the 24th, which is literally the day before Christmas. And then
That's the
you could, yeah, the first night. And then you can see the earliest it's going to be in the coming years is 2032. It's going to be back in November 27th. And then you can see, yeah, right after the run of the Thanksgiving, but it's not, it's, yeah, it's 2 days. I think it's probably going to be 2 days after Thanksgiving that year. And then you can see again on 2035, it's going to be 20, you can see that, right? It's going to be 2035, but I think there's a December 26th. Yeah, here, 2043. It's going to be, you don't know that. 20 years from now? 19 years from now. Don't say that. So 19 years, it's going to be 2043. It's going to be December 26th. That's about the latest it can be. So you can see it's goes between the earliest is November, next year it's December 14th, which to me is kind of like the average. December 12th, December 14th, that feels like the average. But you can see the earliest date it's going to be in the coming years is November 27th. And the latest it's going to be is December 26th. So it's literally a month difference between when it can be. But yeah, the average seems to be kind of like, if you kind of wanted to find the average, it's going to be about December 9th, December 10th or so. That seems like kind of the average. If you had to ask me when Hanukkah is, I would normally say mid-December, around December. But it's always the 25th of Kislev in our house. That's the story. It's the 25th of Kislev. Yep, and our decorations now seem to go up on Thanksgiving, which is not going to be good when it's the 27th now. It'll be almost over. No, it won't be over. It was starting. But so today, as I mentioned last week, we're in Proverbs, and we're towards the beginning of Proverbs. Last week we read the first 4 chapters. And when we look at Proverbs and where it fits into the Bible, somebody asked the question last week, I think Mike asked, is it in the Dead Sea Scrolls? And I mentioned it is. But when I looked at it, I wanted to see what parts of it are in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And actually, very few passages from Proverbs were found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which kind of, if you think about it, because it's a fairly late book of the Bible, it's actually not that surprising that, maybe it wasn't as old. It wasn't maybe as venerated because it wasn't as old. And so there's less of it. But interestingly, and looking at it compared to the way it is in the rendered in the Septuagint, the Greek version of it, which is from the same time as the Dead Sea Scrolls. Remember, it's not any newer, the Septuagint. We think it is because it's Greek and because it's like not Hebrew, but the Hebrew text of the Dead Sea Scrolls, when they're dated, and that's the interesting thing about the scrolls and the earliest copies of the Septuagint, we can actually date the scrolls. We can date the papyri. We can see when they were written based on the science. But
Did we just lose the audio again?
I think so. I've sent a message to Mark.
Good.
yes.
No, you're back.
Okay. So I'm not really sure what's happening. I'm not sure why you lost us on audio or why it's shutting off, but I'm gonna text Mike and let him know that we're having some tech issues. I'm gonna let him know. You know how I could tell because the video camera went away. I mean, it dropped. It went to the back again. So, all right. Hopefully, we'll get this thing fixed, guys. I'm gonna call Mike, text Mike, and make sure that we're on this again. All right. Hold it a second. Let me just text him. Oh no. So I hope you, just to summarize what I was saying before, the text of the Septuagint of Proverbs is actually a very different text than the one we have in our Bible. It's different ordering, it's different chapters. But it doesn't appear to necessarily be a later edition. It actually might be a better edition than what we have in our Bible. People always follow, even Christian Bibles follow the way we have it, what's called the Masoretic text, which, you know, the abbreviation is the MT. So if you ever look in if you ever look in your notes, like John, if you're looking at it, it says MT, that means the Masoretic text. That's what we are studying. That's the handed down text in Hebrew that Jews study, and Christians follow the same text. When we look at when it says LXX, that stands for the Septuagint, for the 70, and the Septuagint is not always, again, even though it's a Greek text, may actually in some cases be a better copy than the Masoretic text that we have.
Assuming your hands on the Septuagint copy or not?
Yeah, well, there's text versions that you can purchase that have the Septuagint the way it's kind of assembled. It's Greek originally, so you can get Greek Septuagint copies, or you can get the English translations of the Septuagint. Yes, and a lot of biblical commentaries will carry a Septuagint translation if you want to have along with you, so that you can follow along and see you can see the Septuagint text next to you. So, again, it helps for people that are studying the text and want to make sure that they have the different possibilities, maybe some of the
That's they go by the Septuagint then?
interestingly, the Septuagint is not really kept by anybody for the purposes of standardization. The churches don't they follow what we use, even the Greeks. I'm trying to find just to show you a version of Septuagint text. Again, a lot of Bibles will have the Septuagint. The Septuagint. It'll have. Michael's just texting me. It'll have the notes of what's in the Septuagint, but let me just see if I can show you a version online.
So there's no religion that we know of
That follows the Septuagint? Not really. So let me just show you. I'll show you an online version of it. Oh, well, this is just, no, this isn't going to help. You know, I don't know. I can't get it to, wait a sec. All right, sorry, folks, it dropped out again, and I'm gonna fix it, but Michael's on his way over, but for some reason, yeah, it's shutting off. We have an auto shut off in there, and it's supposed to shut off after 4 hours, and it seems to be shutting off after 4 minutes.
Show me what it goes.
Here. All right, thanks. Yeah, but here we go. Yeah, but now I'm on. But I don't think I'm on. Am I on Zoom though?
I hear you.
Okay, good. Sorry about that, folks. So I think we got this thing fixed. Yeah, you see our text. Mike is going to stay in there for now until Mike Carlin comes and make sure we've got it on. So looking at where we're picking up, the first, what I had mentioned last week is the first 9 chapters of Proverbs is kind of universally agreed to come from a different source than the next section from 10 through 29. And then 30 and 31 are again, 31 being Eshet Chayil is actually considered almost like an appendices. In the Septuagint, 30 and 31, chapters 30 and 31 are not listed as separate chapters. So that's an example again of the differences in the text. And so so the differences in the text are pretty substantial. So Wikipedia has the images of the Septuagint. You know what? I think actually, to correct myself, Mike, I think the Greek Orthodox Church does follow the Septuagint. I think they do. I'll check that, but they actually might follow this. It might be the only church that follows the Septuagint order of the Bible. But in Proverbs, it's significantly different than it is in the text that we have. And as I said, Dead Sea Scrolls, I don't know if you heard, the Dead Sea Scrolls have very little parts of Proverbs. So today we're going to look at some similar themes to what we saw last week. As we mentioned, Proverbs doesn't really exist as a list of proverbs, a list of sayings. There's more like little stories, little lessons. Again, the Hebrew word for mishle, it is also the word we use for parables. So again, these are not little pithy one-line sayings. Some of them have been kind of taken out of context, but for the most part, these are exhortations. That's the words that are used a lot in the synagogues and churches, mostly churches, exhortations. These are lessons that are given to people. And let's take a look at some of these exhortations and some of these lines that, that we get from our ancestors. And they're oftentimes, especially these first 9 chapters, they're given in the lesson of a father speaking to a son. And as we said before, the feminine is used oftentimes as a description of wisdom. She is called fair wisdom or dame wisdom. It's a woman personified. I will tell you that, again, some modern feminists have taken this as a sign of the Bible having a basis, there's a biblical basis for having the divine be a woman, at least in some cases. There are other feminists, by the way, who don't really subscribe to that because, to some extent, the feminine wisdom here, Sophia, Chokhmah in Hebrew, also speaks the words that are oftentimes seen as patriarchal and an affirmation of a male-dominated kind of society. So the there's feminine words for this. Uh-oh. Mike.
You were back.
Okay, thanks. That there are women here who have important roles to play. All right, so let's take a look. Rosemary, if you would be so kind before we lose power again to read from chapter 5.
My son, listen to my wisdom. Incline your ear to my insight, that you may have foresight, while your lips hold fast to knowledge. For the lips of the forbidden women drip honey. Her mouth is smoother than oil, but in the end she is as bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold of Sheol. She does not chart a path of life. Her course meanders for lack of knowledge. So now, sons, pay heed to me, and do not swerve from the words of my mouth. Keep yourself far away from her. Do not come near the doorway of her house, lest you give up your vigor to others, your years to a ruthless one, lest strangers eat their fill of your strength, and your toil be for the house of another. And in the end you roar when your flesh and body are consumed and say, oh, how I hated discipline and heartily spurned rebuke. I did not pay heed to my teachers or incline my ear to my instructors. Soon I was in dire trouble amidst the assembled congregation. Drink water from your own cistern, running water from your own well. Your springs will gush forth in streams in the public squares. They will be yours alone, others having no part with you. Let your fountain be blessed. Find joy in the wife of your youth, a loving doe, a graceful mountain goat. Let her breasts satisfy you at all times. Be infatuated with love of her always. Why be infatuated, my son, with a forbidden woman? Why clasp the bosom of an alien woman? For a man's ways are before the eyes of God. He surveys his entire course. The wicked man will be trapped in his iniquities. He will be caught up in the ropes of his sin. He will die for lack of discipline, infatuated by his great folly.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look at this and kind of explain this little section. Just so you know, the next section, section 6, is very similar to this one. But when we look at this chapter 5, there's no question that, again, when we looked at chapter 4 and chapter 3, that, you know, this again is, don't stay on a good path, don't go on the bad path, you know, but, and when we talk about women, it seems like, again, sometimes women, or at least the woman, is referred to as wisdom. Here, it does seem to be talking in chapter 4 about a woman in particular. Look, the rabbis interpreted this differently and again, for them, and like to some extent, what they did in the book of Song of Songs, which is love poetry, they interpret this as not what you just saw literally, which is an exhortation to keep away from women that are not your wife. They saw it as staying away from other traditions. The alien woman represents alien ways, other religions, other traditions, other paths. But it does seem like this text, chapter 5, seems to be directed at a young man being told to stay away from foreign women. Yes, and not to be an adulterer. And literally, not to be an adulterer. So when we look at this goes into it right away. Verse 3, it starts the forbidden woman, and it's the Hebrew word for it is zara, strange or foreign. And again, we use that word for foreign ways and foreign traditions. We call avodah zarah, that is idolatry, paganism. It's all forms of other stuff that's not Judaism. We call it zarah, which means strange or foreign. So the fact that the word foreign would be used here for a woman, and sometimes be conflated or confused or drawn together as warnings against strange ways, but it really does seem to be, again, staying away from women that are not your wife. And what's interesting about it is, a lot of people interpret this, the translation interprets it this way, but the literal phrase actually indicates maybe something fairly sexual, which is keep yourself away from her. Do not come near the doorway of her house. And if you look at notes today on biblical commentary, they will literally say, yeah, that's her feminine anatomy or female anatomy. That is her body. Stay away from her opening. Yeah.
It's interesting because the discussion between, although it is between father and son, to be honest.
A teacher.
Yeah, if you want to get really modern, you can discuss it with your daughter, not in regards to son's text, but it's a discussion I have with my sons. I said, listen, we're going to date, right? And the guy you marry is the one you'll be with. Make sure, it's the right one, right?
Yes.
You can divorce, right? I understand. But it's interesting because
Yes, we'll get to that. Hold that right there, because it does say that. Okay. Okay.
That for those, especially fellas, right? Because it's us, right? You're married, right? And whatever the issue is, you're tempted by, right? And it's warning you in at least my notes, in chapter 11 to 14, right? That, your temptation can turn into something really bad.
Yeah. Yes.
Illness-wise.
Yeah.
Like STDs.
Yeah.
And I can't believe it's in here.
It's here. Yes.
Thousands of years ago.
Yeah. Thousands of years ago, they knew. So why do we think that's literally talking about her anatomy? Right? If you look at text commentaries, it'll say the petach baita is her vagina. That's what it'll say. If you look at commentaries today, it'll say that. Why? Because look at what it says. You give your vigor to others, right? The vigor literally means your strength, your bodily vigor. When the Bible says at the end of Deuteronomy, at the end of the Torah, when it says that Moses still was vigorous, the understanding from that meant literally that he was still full of all of his energies, including his sexual energy. That's what it's understood. So first of all, it's saying you're giving up your strength, you're putting your energy you're literally giving up your energy towards something else. And then it says, to some extent, if you impregnate that woman, it's somebody else's child, and your toil will be for the house of another. You literally impregnate a woman, and that child will be yours, but it really won't be yours. It'll be somebody else's child. That's what it's saying, literally. So the interpretation is that's what it's saying. It's not really an interpretation. It's really saying that you're going to be giving somebody else your seed. Yeah.
You know what else is interesting?
So, yes. No. Yes.
Not only did they mention venerable, but they also say this, which is kind of interesting, actually. This is very interesting to me, at least. The assembled congregation may be a judicial tribunal, or more likely, the community.
Yeah.
This is interesting. Public shaming is a powerful means of social control.
Yeah.
Right?
So I was in dire trouble amidst the assembled congregation, the kahal ve'edah. So what John is saying is that then there's a tribunal that you're taken before a Beit Din on the charge of adultery, and you're publicly humiliated. You're actually beaten or flogged, and in some cases, obviously killed. The punishment is death for the adulterers. So this is a serious issue, but again, it seems to be also, even if you're not killed, you can die of STDs, right? Your flesh and body are consumed. And that, again, you can be publicly shamed once people find out. And whether or not there's a physical punishment attached to that, you're humiliated. So all of these reasons why you shouldn't be doing it. And then, of course, the only reason why you are doing it is because you don't have discipline. You just don't have discipline. That's why you're doing it. Right? You didn't listen. So, of course, here, what's the alternative? What should you be doing? You should be doing, what you should be doing is loving your wife, the wife of your youth. Now, some people say, what is that? What does that mean, wife of your youth? Is it an implication that like second wife, your third wife, because you could be married to more than one woman in those days, that like your first wife is really the wife that matters? Probably not. It's probably talking about here, because again, maybe even by the time this was written, polygamy was not the standard norm. If this was written at a later time in biblical history, again, during the Greco-Roman period or just before the Greco period in the 300s, the Jewish people by that point had already moved away from tribal family structure, where that lends itself a lot more to polygamy. People are living in cities and they're kind of not in a tent situation. And probably not as much, there's not as much polygamy happening. So it's probably not talking about polygamy, like the first wife, if you will. It's talking about your wife, your wife, the woman you are married to, as opposed to somebody else's wife. And look, it is, I guess, poetic, but it's also very realistic. It's very physical. It's very much out there. Now, some of it's poetic. I'm gonna say it's not, none of it's poetic, right? It compares her to, a fountain, right? Drink water from your cistern, running water from your own well.
I find it very interesting.
Yeah.
Uncomfortable, right, to discuss something.
Yeah. But here it is. Here it is. And your wife is compared to a fountain, living waters, right? And yeah. So it is, yeah, I mean, I think it's fairly descriptive, fairly, I mean, it's poetic too, but it's also very descriptive. It's very, I think it's, I mean, again, we're going to see it in Song of Songs, much more descriptive prose and poetry on the human body. But it's here, right? So you can see that this is, again, about adultery, which again would cause the breakdown of society. People are engaging in adultery. It's one of the ways that society breaks down. Now you could say, well, that's biblical mentality, old-timey stuff, but it's true. It's still true in the society we live in today. But what happens is, again, for as modern and as progressive and as open-minded as we are, we know that the family structure of having a parent who, is not trusted by the other parent, it creates a lot of damage. And it is again, till we figure out another structure for raising families and another structure for building society around, we don't have an alternative. And it's not like they didn't have it, folks. It's here because people were engaging in adultery and it was causing problems. That's why it's here. It's not here because it wasn't happening. It was here because it was happening and it causes problems. So this is the caution for this. Again, most of it is caution. Some of it is do the right thing, be with your wife. But of the 23 verses, most of it is no, no, no. Most of it's exhortation, what to avoid. And it's a serious exhortation. Chapter 6 continues with some of those themes, right? Here we go.
My son, if you have stood surety for your fellow, given your hand for another, you have been trapped by the words of your mouth, snared by the words of your mouth. Do this then, my son, to extricate yourself, for you have come into the power of your fellow. Go grovel and badger your fellow. Give your eyes no sleep, your pupils no slumber. Save yourself like a deer out of the hand of a hunter, like a bird out of the hand of a fowler. Lazy bones, go to the ant, study its ways, and learn. Without leaders, officers, or rulers, it lays up its stores during the summer, gathers in its food at the harvest. How long will you lie there, lazy bones? When will you wake from your sleep? A bit more sleep, a bit more slumber, a bit more hugging yourself in bed, and poverty will come calling upon you and want like a man with a shield. A scoundrel, an evil man, lives by crooked speech, winking his eyes, shuffling his feet, pointing his finger. Duplicity is in his heart. He plots evil all the time. He incites quarrels. Therefore, calamity will come upon him without warning. Suddenly, he will be broken beyond repair. 6 things the Lord hates, 7 are an abomination to him: a haughty bearing, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a mind that hatches evil plots, feet quick to run to evil, a false witness testifying lies, and one who incites brothers to quarrel. My son, keep your father's commandment. Do not forsake your mother's teaching. Tie them over your heart always. Bind them around your throat. When you walk, it will lead you. When you lie down, it will watch over you. And when you are awake, it will talk with you. For the commandment is a lamp, the teaching is a light, and the way to life is the rebuke that disciplines. It will keep you from an evil woman, from the smooth tongue of a forbidden woman. Do not lust for her beauty, or let her captivate you with her eyes. The last loaf of bread will go for a harlot. A married woman will snare a person of honor. Can a man rake embers into his bosom without burning his clothes? Can a man walk on live coals without scorching his feet? It is the same with one who sleeps with his fellow's wife. None who touches her will go unpunished. A thief is not held in contempt for stealing to appease his hunger. Yet if caught, he must pay sevenfold. He must give up all he owns. He who commits adultery is devoid of sense. Only one who would destroy himself does such a thing. He will meet with disease and disgrace. His reproach will never be expunged. The fury of the husband will be passionate. He will show no pity on his day of vengeance. He will not have regard for any ransom. He will refuse your bribe, however great.
Yep. So the last chunk of this, right? From 24 down to the end, the last 10 verses or so, 11 verses, again, are warnings about women. Now here it's very specific, adultery. Here it's not just a foreign woman, a strange woman, a woman that's not your wife. Here it's very clear, it's a wife of somebody else. Now, is the first one any kind of woman that's not your wife? Maybe. And this is specifically about adultery. But it does say some similar stuff, which is that you're going to get disease. You're devoid of sense, right? You're not acting very smart. But here it also specifically talks about the husband coming after you. So here we get to an interesting point, which is not just humiliation, not just disease, not just all the other stuff that can come about with, the sense of guilt, whatever, all the other issues. Here it's flat out, you're risking your life because somebody could kill you. There's no way to get out of that passion that other guy is going to have towards you. You can't pay him off. If he wants to kill you, he's just going to kill you. So, yeah, it's a warning because it happens. It happens. It is one of those things that I remember when I used to visit people in prison. I visited a guy once who was a really interesting guy, very smart. I used to talk to him a lot. He was not Jewish, or was not born Jewish, but he got very involved in studying Torah, and I used to give him books and midrash and stuff. He was very interested in Jewish texts. He got very interested in Jewish texts. I don't know what happened to him. He got a life sentence for killing the guy that took his wife. I don't know, he took her, had an affair with her. I don't think he even took her away from him, but when he found out, he confronted the guy, went over to his house, and he got in a fight and he shot him. He killed him. And this is a guy who had his own company out in Palmdale. He was successful. He did not have, he had no previous crime, but he killed a man, and he knew it. He didn't deny it. He said something went off. When he confronted the guy, some part of his brain just shut off, and he didn't think about anything other than killing the guy. And he says, now I got to pay for it for the rest of my life. I made one mistake in one moment. I looked through his file too, by the way. He never had another crime. He had a physical therapy business out in Palmdale. And yeah, something just in him snapped. So I thought about, a lot of the people I would visit in prison had a whole trajectory where their lives were ruined by drugs or by, associations with people for gangs and just bad decision, one bad decision after another, and bad decision led to prison. But this is a guy who in 1 minute sent himself to prison for life. I thought about it, and again, there are very few things other than that kind of passion, that kind of anger that comes from feeling, you know, that sense of betrayal, you know, that, I mean, I can't say, you know, obviously couldn't understand it necessarily completely, but I kind of could understand somebody getting so angry that their brain shut off when they felt like that happened. I mean, I know it happens. You hear about it. You see a Dateline, you see whatever, you see the news, you know it happens. But I had never sat and talked with somebody who had actually done that before. And it was pretty wild. I'll never forget it. It was kind of like I walked away from the conversation going, oh my gosh, most people, their whole lives lead them to that. You know, they've had 10, 15 years of bad decisions that lead them to prison, but sometimes in an instant, sometimes it happens in a moment. So yeah, the fury of the husband will be passionate. Yeah, another reason to be wary of your adultery can get you killed. So that's the last part of it again. But look at the other parts of this, right? It talks a lot about the most famous line of this chapter, of course, is what? Consider the ant.
Go to the ant, thou sluggard.
Consider the ant, right? Yeah. Go to the ant. So it's an example of the Bible occasionally looking at the natural world and teaching a lesson from it. Doesn't happen a lot. This is one of the clearest examples of parable or basis for a fable, right? You know, where Aesop's fables, we also have Jewish versions of those animal fables where, you know, animals are examples, right? They teach a lesson. This one's pretty just straightforward. Look at the ant. Now, I will say that they clearly didn't understand a lot about the hierarchy and the structures of the ant world, which we have studied in great detail and depths now. After thousands of years, we know more about the ants, that they are a little bit more structured than these guys thought. The ants are very hierarchical. They are completely, from the moment that they're born, are wired to do certain things. And yes, they do very much, as people would observe them thousands of years ago, they store away food, right? People saw them march away with the food. They weren't eating it right there. They were walking away with it, putting it away. And so the ant in Aesop's fables and in the Jewish versions of these fables, sometimes there's one of the most famous collections of the Jewish fables are the fox tales, the fox fables. Ants are always industrious. They're always hardworking. They're always storing things away. You know, the most famous version of the Aesop's fable is the ant and the grasshopper, right? The grasshopper is enjoying life and not thinking about tomorrow, where the ant is storing everything away and is the one that actually survives. So yeah, the ants are considered to be an example from the ancient world of thriftiness, industrialness, savings, thinking of, you know, having foresight, that yeah, that they're the example that you should follow, because again, no one ever saw an ant sleeping. We didn't know that ants do have a nocturnal cycle, but yeah, they're always on the move. They're always working. And what's the opposite of that? Lying there and sleep. Not getting out of bed. Now, of course, I don't know if they were cognizant of depression and, you know, why some people might not be getting out of bed, but there is also this idea that is, we know, early to bed, early to rise, right? Keeps a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. They definitely like this idea in the biblical period that There's a time to sleep and there's a time not to be sleeping. And everyone can go, if I just lay down a little bit longer, I just stay in bed. It's so nice in here, so toasty in my bed. Nope. It's a good way to become poor, right? Yeah, you don't want to be lazy, and what happens to you? You end up doing bad stuff. When you're lazy and you have to try to cheat people to get a buy, of course, what happens? You become a scoundrel, right? You become a person who cheats other people and takes advantage of people. And then we have this little exhortation, verse 16. 6 things the Lord hates, 7 are an abomination to him. That's a very biblical way, very poetic way of saying there's 7 things God doesn't like. 6, no, make it 7. That's kind of a weird phrase, right? But we have that in some Jewish texts where they go 6 things. Nah, it's 7. That's just the way they set it up. So you could just say, why don't they just say 7? But no, there's one more, right? They go like there's 6, but really there's 7. And then you look at the list, right? The first 5 of them are all parts of your body. Well, kind of, in the sense it's hard to see it in the translation. But the first 5 they're like literally describing parts of your body. Why do I say that? Because they translate the word einayim ramot as a haughty bearing. But the problem is then you don't see the bodily connection. Because the King James for verse 17 will say, Mary, a proud look, which is not even the full translation of it. John, do you have a different translation for 17? It's not a good translation that'll cover the actual Hebrew words, but what is yours? Yeah, that's the same text. Yeah, a haughty bearing. Yeah, but the Hebrew for it is right here. Einayim ramot. Now, it definitely means a haughty bearing. It's arrogance. What was yours again, Mary? The King James said? A proud look. The word Ramah means high, right? And Einayim means your eyes, looking down on somebody. We just don't call it that. But looking down on somebody, eyes that are on high are looking down, looking down on somebody. I'm looking down on this person from the point of view of your eyes looking down on them. But it's einayim, it's eyes. So it's eyes looking down, a tongue that lies, hands that shed blood, innocent blood, a mind, which, by the way, is the translation of Mary. 18 doesn't say mind, it says heart, right? It translates lev, as we talked about last week, as heart, even though it's kind of heart, mind, both definitely a mind. This should be in there. That's your mind. That's your lev. That's your part of your body. And the last one is raglayim, feet or legs.
Mine said mind. Mary says heart.
Because the word lev we talked about, right? B'chol levavcha, we talked about it in the Ve'ahavta, right? With all your heart, But it really is with all your mind. It's with all your heart. That's why the newer translations I mentioned usually use the word heart/mind rather than one or the other, because both of them are definitely implied. I would say, again, in most cases, it really is your mind, it's your conscious thought, rather your rational thought, rather than just your emotional heart. But these are all parts of your body, right? These are all parts of your body. Your eyes, your mouth, your hands, your mind, heart, and your feet. The last 2, now again, so people quote this. They'll quote this as the 7 things that, whatever, the 7 parts of the 7 bad things that you shouldn't be, right? And then the last two are not parts of your body. The last two, again, are a false witness, that is ed shaker, which is exactly what the Bible tells you you're not supposed to be, bearing false witness, right? Bearing false witness. And then the last one is causing brothers to fight. An instigator. So, I mean, this is serious stuff. It's not just saying not lying. It's testifying in court. It's testifying in front of other people about something that didn't happen. Lying under oath, if you will. Yeah, that's a serious issue. And causing other people to fight isn't just fighting with somebody. It's not saying don't fight with somebody. I mean, that's kind of goes without saying. You don't want to fight with people, but sometimes, you have to defend yourself. That's not what this is talking about. This is talking about getting other people to fight. Like you sitting back and watching two people fight. I made them fight, and you taking joy from that. So the last two are not using parts of your body, but they're pretty serious things too. So again, these are all behaviors that when you look at it, these are things that God hates. God hates these things. God hates them. They are toevot. They are abominations. And these are all, again, different ways of behaving. Behavioral issues, And then it finishes with that line. My son, keep your father's commandment. Do not forsake your mom's Torah. Right? The mitzvot of your father, the Torah of your mother. So again, whether or not you see this book as feminist or whatever, I think it shows at a very basic level that you don't just listen to your dad, you listen to your mom too. They're both your teachers. And that by itself is already showing us that it's not all patriarchal. Again, a lot of the voice is a father speaking to his son. Maybe the whole thing is directed at a boy. I don't know. Maybe. Fine. Okay. That would be normal in the sense in the biblical period. That's the kind of teaching you maybe would expect. I don't know. But at the very least, it just told you that a father is telling then the boy, you listen to your mother. Her words are commandments. They're teachings too. They're Torah. That's the word that's used. Torat imecha. Your mother's Torah. Your mother's got Torah to teach you. Okay? So I don't know. Okay. Maybe it's not feminist, but it's at least telling you the women have a role to teach their kids. Anyways, love this line right here, by the way. The last loaf of bread will go to a harlot. A married woman will snare a person of honor. Now there, the harlot and the married woman are used together, right? This is a harlot or a married woman that you're cheating with. Definitely here talking about lust, right? By the way, interestingly, look what parts of her body she's using. The smooth tongue, right, of a forbidden woman. The eyes, right? This isn't not just especially like you'd be thinking, oh, look at it, the normal physical attraction that somebody would have. No, it's a lot more, if you will, dynamic than that. It's a lot less, if you will, superficial than that, right? It's the things that she does to entice you. And the word that's used here, do not lust for her beauty, is the same word we have in the Ten Commandments for lo tachmod. Al tachmod means don't covet, don't lust. So this isn't, again, just envy. The same word that's used here in the Ten Commandments, again, tachmod means more than just wanting something. It's lusting for it. It's coveting it to the point where, again, you are essentially, you know, you're stuck. You're stuck on it. And of course, you will give up everything for it. Your last loaf of bread, your addiction to her, your inability to think about anything else or to do anything else will literally draw you into poverty in order to have that. And it happens. There are people who literally give up their money, give up their wealth and livelihood, money that they've earned, in order to chase after that woman. So whether it's, whatever you want to call it, it becomes an addiction. There's somebody who's addicted.
34, that will identify your inmates rationale.
Yeah. And when I talked to him, I thought of that line. I thought about that line of somebody coming after you and wanting to kill you. Gosh, it's so amazing that people literally will put themselves in a position where they will be, somebody wants to kill them. So, yeah, it's a serious issue. The adultery and the obsession that somebody has, that's the word I'm looking for. The obsession is so great that they'll give up everything for that, including to some extent, they're risking their lives. So yeah, the Bible is pretty straightforward in this cautionary tale. So again, saw it in chapter 5, it's reinforced this last section, chapter 6, the dangers of this. Again, the rabbis interpreted it to be foreign ways and bad behaviors in general, right? Well, again, following in the idolatry and paganism of these other cultures. But I think it's pretty clear that it is, at some basic level, chasing after women that you're not supposed to be sleeping with. I don't know what else to say. It's pretty straightforward.
Interesting how it's just the man chasing the female, the male chasing the female, not the female chasing the male.
Yeah.
Although it does say in 26, a married woman will snare a person of honor.
Yeah.
It makes no sense. Does that mean that she's not a person of honor?
Well, she's going after somebody that she wants, and she'll take them down. Yeah, the motivations for women having the affairs are not really there, except for maybe that line, which is that, she wants to essentially get a guy who comes from a good family, that has honor, whatever. That might be her motivation. But yes, the female side of this is not really given. Yeah. Yeah, but so let's say she's not married to somebody who's very well respected.
Separate yourself.
No, but your point is that usually it doesn't talk about it from the woman's standpoint. That's one of the few lines where the motivation for why a woman might be doing this is there. Overall, yeah, it's not really concerned with what's the motivation of a woman to do these things. Look, I'm not a woman, and so I can't really tell you as a woman what it feels like to read this, because I can't honestly say, hey, this is patriarchal, or this isn't fair. There's no question that it was written for a male audience, and it was written with the intention of being a cautionary tale for men. Today, one can make the argument that where we live in a society where women have similar roles, and in some cases the power dynamic is shifted, yeah, you could say to some extent this could be for a woman too, a cautionary tale for a woman. But I mean, well, I don't want to get into it other than somebody like Dennis Prager or somebody who's on the more conservative end of this political spectrum would say to you, men still need to be cautioned about this. Women really don't need to be cautioned about this because women don't behave like this. I don't know. I can't say that definitively. I can only say
Well, I don't know. I
definitively.
mean, obviously they keep saying this married woman, so obviously women do behave like this.
Yeah, but their motivation or their reasons for doing it are different from the standpoint of, yes, they're participants in this. They're not being forced into it. That's for sure. But the cautionary tale for it from the standpoint of why is a man engaging in this kind of behavior, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of thought to it. And the that's why I said, for somebody who's going to interpret this today, some people would say, yeah, men still need to be cautioned about this because they behave like this, whereas women are less likely to behave like this in the sense, even if a power dynamic is shifted, you know, that's yeah, that's that's not for me to say other than I can tell you that men still have this issue. And one could argue that the power dynamic is different from the sense that I think most women today, well, I think it's interesting actually, Rosemary. I think Rosemary, there's an interesting dynamic here, which is that most relationships, most examples of infidelity, especially in a case where both parties are married, let's face it, the reality is most of the time when this happens is that these are workplace romances, right? And it's probably appropriate to say this during the holiday season, though most of us are not going to holiday Christmas parties at work. But some of these things, that's actually where it happened, at a holiday party. But yeah, I just read an article about it this morning. Yeah, it's called snowmanning. I didn't know that. I didn't know there was such a term as snowmanning, but yeah, it's the hookups that happen during the holiday times. Anyways, that's an interesting feature because obviously in the case where they're talking about men in the biblical period having affairs with women, in most cases, what we're probably talking about is a man having an affair with a friend of his wife or somebody in the community's wife. Maybe he's not necessarily friends with the other man, but they're in the similar social circles where, again, it's not like he met the woman at work. It's not like he was working with the woman and he interacted with her at where they were either, in a situation where they were essentially taken out of their home and community in another community, right? And I do think that has something to do with why it happens and why people talk about it today in kind of different ways, because I do think that in the biblical period, and actually for a lot of human history, the opportunities for a man and a woman who were not married to each other to be together were most likely from the standpoint of they were in similar social circles, and not that they worked together. I mean, you could say that's splitting hairs, but it's not, because if you're having an affair, I guess if the power dynamic is off and the person works for you, vice versa, either way, that there was a power dynamic at play. If people are coworkers, they're really meeting each other, or they're having an affair based on their similar experiences, and not, hey, I really think my friend's wife is attractive, I'm going to sleep with her.
Try to.
Whatever. But yeah, in the biblical period, that's what it would have been. So when the Bible says don't covet your neighbor's wife, that's a reality. I mean, that's like normal, like where that would have happened. I mean, that was the normative experience where somebody was having that experience. It's a different experience. And again, I'm not saying it's better. It's not better or worse. It has nothing to do with like where the scope of this comes from. But when you think of what happens in most relationships, the person is socializing and spending time with a woman or a man, well, again, either way, where they're interacting in a sphere where they don't see each other as necessarily the spouse of somebody else. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's not like they're saying, oh, that's my friend's wife, I'm going to sleep with her. I work with this woman, I fell in love with her because we spend so much time together. And that happens a lot. That happens a
Well, the
lot.
Bible, they seem to meet up at the well a lot.
Yeah, there are people that they're in their social circle. I see that woman. Yeah, we interact together. We had a party and we had a big festival and everybody came out to the festival. And oh man, I didn't realize that's my cousin's wife. Whatever because most likely it was probably his cousin too, his cousin's wife. Yeah, this is how people, this is why it was a little different in the biblical period. Now, I think to some extent, I'm not making, I know it sounds like I'm making an excuse for it, but what I'm saying is that people don't see that their interactions with the person are not based on the fact that that's somebody else's wife. They don't think about it, obviously. They didn't think about the consequences, but that's what happened. So it is a different world. It is a much different world when it comes to how people meet and how they come together and yeah, I mean,
People are still falling for the boss's daughter and the boss's wife, though, and that happens in the Bible a lot.
yeah, but I don't think it's just forbidden fruit in our day. That's what I'm trying to say. Is I think a lot of times, you're spending so much time with somebody. It's like, that joke about, the work wife and
Right.
the work wife. There's something like that term means something, because if you spend more time with a woman during your waking hours, you're going to start having connections with that person, and they're meaningful connections. Yeah. But you can understand why those things develop differently. You're spending so much time with a person. I know. I understand, but you can understand why you don't understand why it leads to. I understand, but then all I'm saying is that's a circumstance that people find each other in that they didn't find each other. That's even weirder, right? But no, when people see and again, look, I'm not going to get into it, but there's another issue, which is people are away on a conference. They're on a conference together. They're traveling together. This is behavior that in the ancient world, people couldn't even imagine. You went away with somebody's wife, like you just said, Rosemary, they met at a well. You didn't go to the well that's 2 towns over with the woman.
Well, Paris did.
So that's why you get in trouble.
Yeah.
You got in trouble. Look, I mean, people travel with their colleagues now all the time. I'm not going to get into it, but my wife spent last week with a colleague in Florida. And if I was a jealous husband, I'd be sitting there, thinking about it all the time. I'm not. Now I am. Now I'm thinking about it. But I'm saying, like, in the ancient world, the idea that you sent your wife away for 4 days with another guy, nobody would ever do that. They'd be like, what are you, an idiot? We don't do that. We don't. We are asking for it today. I'm not saying we deserve it. I'm just saying you can understand why it happens, because we're doing things that they didn't do. And so when it happens, I'm not super surprised by it. Again, Mike, you're right. It's against the 10 Commandments. There's ethical issues with it. There's moral issues. There's all the other things that people think about. But you can understand why, again, our ancestors would have thought we were crazy. You're asking for it. You sent her away with you, you sent your wife away with another guy. Are you crazy? So, yeah, we live in a much different society today. However you want to look at it, as I said, male, women, men, woman, woman, man, however it's happening, whoever's instigated, Whoever instigated it, yes, man, woman, whatever, Mike, thank you. So all I'm gonna say is that, again, there was a logic to it, and they understood the consequences. And again, maybe it was a little bit simpler times from the standpoint of what the dynamics were, but it definitely happened in the ancient world. All right. And then there's King David. That's right, Mary. Well, the power dynamic is always a factor, right? That's always a factor. The power dynamic is still a factor. It was a factor. It's always going to be a factor. Wherever there's that power dynamic, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Casting couch, boss, given the manager, given a colleague or a junior colleague promotion because of something. It happens all the time. But that power dynamic is always there and is now even more part of our lives. Oh, my goodness. But Floyd's, they should leave well enough alone. Yeah. That is unbelievable. Floyd, once again, by the way, he did not. Yeah. But by the way, I just want to share, I did not share with you. I just looked. My text to you never went back, and it just went, I just sent it. I meant to send it a week ago. But anyways, literally, yeah. I hate when I think I sent a text and it didn't go through. And you don't notice it. It was Thursday. Whatever. Sorry, Floyd. If you think about they should leave well enough alone. That is a great one. That's a New York Times cartoon. The complications. Yes. The complications at universities. I'm going to get that. I'm going to get into that one. Yeah, it's a different world we live in today. Let's look at chapter 7. And this definitely feels like a father speaking to a son.
My son, heed my words and store up my commandments with you. Keep my commandments and live, my teaching as the apple of your eye. Bind them on your fingers, write them on the tablet of your mind. Say to wisdom, you are my sister, and call understanding a kinswoman. She will guard you from a forbidden woman, from an alien woman whose talk is smooth. From the window of my house, through my lattice, I looked out and saw among the simple, noticed among the youths, a lad devoid of sense. He was crossing the street near her corner, walking toward her house in the dusk of evening, in the dark hours of night. A woman comes toward him, dressed like a harlot, with set purpose. She is bustling and restive. She is never at home. Now in the street, now in the square, she lurks at every corner. She lays hold of him and kisses him. Brazenly, she says to him, I had to make a sacrifice of well-being. Today I fulfilled my vows. Therefore I have come out to you, seeking you, and have found you. I have decked my couch with covers of dyed Egyptian linen. I have sprinkled my bed with myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. Let us drink our fill of love until morning. Let us delight in amorous embrace. For the man of the house is away. He is off on a distant journey. He took his bag of money with him and will return only at mid-month. She sways him with her eloquence, turns him aside with her smooth talk. Thoughtlessly, he follows her, like an ox going to the slaughter, like a fool to the stocks for punishment, until the arrow pierces his liver. He is like a bird rushing into a trap, not knowing his life is at stake. Now, sons, listen to me. Pay attention to my words. Let your mind not wander down her ways. Do not stray onto her paths. For many are those she has struck dead, and numerous are her victims. Her house is a highway to Sheol, leading down to death's inner chambers.
Yeah. Darchei Sheol. Highway to hell. Or highway to the netherworld, a way to death.
Is there a kind of a sexual metaphor there with death's inner
Oh
chambers?
yeah, oh yeah. This is the same phrase. It doesn't use the petach beta, which is the opening to her house, but it does say her beta, her house, which is again another metaphor for her feminine, her yeah, her body.
But in this case, though, man of the house. Gone.
Yeah.
Honey. So she's being as wicked as a man is looking for lust. She's lusting.
Oh yeah, no, here, oh no. This whole story, folks, first of all, it's a story, right? It's like a little tale, description. There's very, very, very intricate description. I'm looking down on him, but I'm not just looking down. I see this thing unfolding. I'm looking through the crack, through the lattice in my window. I mean, look at the description of that. You know, I'm looking down. The guy can't see me. I'm looking down through the holes in my window. He can't see me, right? There's lattice on the window. He doesn't see that I'm looking down on him. The whole setup here is very descriptive and very powerful. I'm watching this thing unfold. I'm watching this woman who does this stuff all the time. She's always out doing this kind of stuff. And this guy doesn't realize he's being played. Right? It's a story of, again, a guy watching this happen, right? And, you know, he wishes he could do something about it. He knows what's happening. You know, it's a weird thing. This is a very unusual. This is a very unusual, you know, you know, it's just it's such a powerful vision of a woman committing adultery. And again, it's not really, you know, you hear, I mean, it's all her taking advantage of her husband, her, yeah, she's stalking him. She's lying to the guy. She's, you know, you know, I tell you, as I, there is a little bit of her side to this, right? There's a little bit of her motivation in what's happening here. It's nothing good, but you can hear like her lies, right? So it's a weird thing. Like, you know what I compare it to? I compare it to this little ditty that, you know, right? The Eagles, right? Lying eyes, right? So that you know, this is the story of a woman going out and cheating on her husband, right? So she tells him she must go out for the evening to comfort an old friend who's feeling down, but he knows where she's going as she's leaving. She's heading for the cheating side of town. So the husband knows that he's being cheated on. He knows it, right? And, you know, it's a great song, first of all. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's a great song. And here, of course, the motivation is also like she's not feeling any passion in her current in her marriage, right? She's not, so she feels that from, she feels that way that this younger guy is making her feel, right? But she says, you know, she used to feel that way about her husband, but she doesn't anymore. What's interesting, of course, is it's a guy telling the story, right? It's Glenn Fry singing the song, and he's singing it kind of almost from the standpoint of this guy who's telling the story in Proverbs. The guy's looking down and seeing this all play out. But you wonder, the guy telling the story, was he that guy that was cheating at one point? Was he the guy being cheated on? It's a guy telling the story. He's watching the story unfold. So there's something really powerful about that chapter. I mean, to me, the whole concept of the guy telling his son, and remember, he's telling his son, don't behave like this. Don't be like, at the end of the day, he's telling his son not to be like the kid that's cheating on, cheating is the cheater, is the one that's cheating with the woman. Don't be like that guy. But there's a little bit of that. Look at that. Look what the woman's doing. And of course, in Proverbs, there's no there's a reason for her not feeling attached to her husband anymore, that you see in the song. Here, she's just a wicked woman, using another Eagles lyric. She's a wicked woman, but her motivation isn't necessarily, there's no good motivation there other than she's trying to get a guy to sleep with her. And she's enticing him. Yeah, she's stalking him. She's enticing him. Look at this. I got beautiful sheets on. I've got, on the bed, I've got these smells, right? Myrrh, aloes, and cinnamon. I've got a whole sensual experience there, right? It's all there. Smells, the touch. It's going to be an amazing experience for you. So it's very, very tempting, right? There's nothing in this that seems bad other than the consequences of it, which are, they're going to be bad, right? The arrow is going to pierce his liver. He's going to be going into a trap, not knowing his life as at stake. So this is not a joke, but the enticement is definitely there. So it's not like it's not like he's just making a stupid decision. He's being, there's reasons for it. He's attracted to her. He sees that she's beautiful. He sees that the situation is going to be a great experience, but it's taking his life and he's risking his life. Yeah. Right. So, it's caution. What? Yeah.
Man of the house is away, he is off on a distant journey. Fine, we got that, right? The notes say, she, right, the guy, reassures the boy. It doesn't say the man, right? So it's almost like.
Well, he's a younger, he's a younger guy.
Sure, the fellow man.
Yeah, look, at the beginning it says, I see a youth, I see a lad, a nar, devoid of sense. That's why I think of that lying eyes, man. The whole thing is like, she sees a younger guy. It's a younger guy. She's in love with a younger guy. She wants a younger guy than her husband. Yes, he seems like an older guy who's gone out to work, man. He's out on the road. I mean, look,
I think there's a little implication with that bag of money that maybe he's not faithful either.
It's interesting. Rosemary, I thought about that, right? He's taking his money with him. He's out on the road, right? He's going to be playing around.
Fine.
Or at least she's implying that he is.
Any translation that's different on verse 20 for you, Mary, there on the King James? Took his bag of money with him. Yeah, and then what does it say? Yeah, which is another way, on the day appointed, that we know when he's coming back. Yeah, that's a weird one, that it says he's coming back at mid-month. Yeah, but all I'm saying is that the King James doesn't even say, it's interesting that they translate the word Yom Kiseh as mid-month. That's an interesting one. But Yeah, look, it's an interesting setup because at the very least, what it's, I mean, we can all agree. My husband's out of town and we know he's out of town. He ain't coming back. He ain't coming back soon. Taking his money bag with him and saying he's coming back Yom Kisei on the appointed time or mid-month essentially means he's gone for a couple weeks. He ain't coming back tomorrow. He ain't coming back, anytime soon. So you don't have to worry about him coming in, finding us there. That's the implication, right? The implication is he's not going to find us. But yeah, she's definitely the more aggressive one in this. There's no question that she's, to some extent, taking advantage of his youth. She's taking advantage of his inexperience. And he doesn't understand that she does this all the time, which seems to also be part of the dynamic here is this kid doesn't know any better. She does this all the time, which means to some extent, she doesn't like you that much, guy. She does this all the time. So you're there to be a body for her. It's a very interesting dynamic. Like I said, I think there's a lot going on in there that is, it's a story. And it's a little tale right there that, it sticks with you. All those things, the dynamic, the voyeuristic part of this too. I mean, I always struck with the voyeurism of this, the guy peeking through his blinds, watching this happen. That to me was like, that's there. The guy's saying, I see this thing going on. As the voyeur, as the guy watching it. Yeah. Anyways, it's a wild scene. Chapter 7. The guy feels like, I wish I could tell this kid what to do, he's stupid. He's stupid. All right. That's a bad story. Not a good story. That's a cautionary tale. Cautionary tale. Kind of feels sad. It's a good song though. Lion Eyes, it's a great song. I love that song. Interestingly, let's take a look at this one. Let's look at this opening for chapter 8.
It is wisdom calling, understanding raising her voice. She takes her stand at the topmost heights, by the wayside, at the crossroads. Near the gates at the city entrance, at the entryways, she shouts, O men, I call to you. My cry is to all mankind. O simple ones, learn shrewdness. O dullards, instruct your minds. Listen, for I speak noble things. Uprightness comes from my lips. My mouth utters truth. Wickedness is abhorrent to my lips. All my words are just, none of them perverse or crooked. All are straightforward to the intelligent man, and right to those who have attained knowledge. Accept my discipline rather than silver, knowledge rather than choice gold. For wisdom is better than rubies, no goods can equal her. I, wisdom, live with prudence. I attain knowledge and foresight. To fear the Lord is to hate evil. I hate pride, arrogance, the evil way, and duplicity in speech. Mine are counsel and resourcefulness. I am understanding. Courage is mine. Through me, kings reign and rulers decree just laws. Through me, princes rule, great men and all the righteous judges. Those who love me, I love, and those who seek me will find me. Riches and honor belong to me, enduring wealth and success. My fruit is better than gold, fine gold, and my produce better than choice silver. I walk on the way of righteousness, on the paths of justice. I endow those who love me with substance. I will fill their treasuries. The Lord created me at the beginning of his course as the first of his works of old.
Pause right there before we finish up this last section. there's a few things, actually, we should have probably stopped at a few places before we get this. This is all wisdom speaking as a woman, feminine form and everything else. So again, very different than the woman that we just read, the evil woman. This is wisdom. This isn't a woman. This is the personification of wisdom speaking as a woman. But it is interesting that it's juxtaposed with an evil woman, which again is one of the reasons why the rabbis can say, it's not an evil woman, it's evil ways, it's the bad ways, it's the... Well, that's not Eagles, that's Santana. You got to change your evil ways. Yeah, which is a guy speaking to a woman, change your evil ways. But this is really a sense of a woman telling a person, most likely a young man, again, don't do the wrong thing. Don't, be smart, right? Be smart. Of course, it says that wisdom lives with prudence, which is again capitalized. Aruma is capitalized as wisdom is capitalized. Mary, in verse 12, is prudence, is that a translation for Arma? It's not capitalized. And knowledge is not capitalized, obviously, either. That's dot. Yeah, this seems to be, again, bringing together wisdom, prudence as, again, personifications, divine personifications, almost angels, if you will. A lot of these lines are taken out of context. These lines are oftentimes, again, bumper stickers, this line, for example, wisdom is better than rubies, no goods can equal her, right? That's an example of a line that, people would use. Well, that's another song.
Evil Woman is, I was just looking at the lyrics to Evil Woman. It's very appropriate to this.
But I said evil ways.
Yeah.
And that is Santana. You've got to change your evil ways, baby, before I start loving you.
Yeah.
Which again implies that, it's more than just an evil woman, it's a evil ways. But yeah, look at this. This is wisdom being, look at all the great things that come through me, right? Those who love me, I love. Those who seek will find me. You can attain this. And then once you attain it, you get riches and honor, enduring wealth and success, right? Wonderful woman. Yeah. No, they're love songs, but they're not like that, right? Right? But let's take a look at this. So women, the female personification of Sophia, of wisdom. We've read about it up until now. It's been in almost every chapter. Wisdom contrasted with folly, with bad ways, with everything else. But now we're going to get into something very, very different. And this is, we gotta look at it separately. Because this is something that makes people go, hey, wait a second, what's this going on? Talked about it a little bit before last time, but here's the more famous and kind of like, well, what do we make out of this? Here we go.
The Lord created me at the beginning of his course as the first of his works of old. In the distant past I was fashioned, at the beginning, at the origin of earth. There was still no deep when I was brought forth, no springs rich in water. Before the foundations of the mountains were sunk, before the hills, I was born. He had not yet made earth and fields or the world's first clumps of clay. I was there when he set the heavens into place, when he fixed the horizon upon the deep, when he made the heavens above firm and the fountains of the deep gushed forth, when he assigned the sea its limits so that its waters never transgress his command. When he fixed the foundations of the earth, I was with him as a confidant, a source of delight every day, rejoicing before him at all times, rejoicing in his inhabited world, finding delight with mankind.
Okay, so let's pause right there for a second. This is primordial wisdom. This is wisdom that exists before anything else that's created. This is wisdom that is almost, again, a divine being. Yeah, Mother Nature, but even beyond nature. As God is planning out the universe, that wisdom is there with God. To some extent, again, helping God. This is a strange part of the chapter. This is a strange part of the Bible. Again, some people point to it as kind of an indication that this is kind of a later part of the Bible that can write in these kind of philosophical, metaphorical, to some extent, maybe even under a Gnostic influence. It's going on here. Wisdom is there with God as the universe is being created. What is this? Divine, feminine, angel, whatever. This is something that, exists in the Bible here. This is the Bible. This isn't like a midrash. This isn't a apocryphal text. This is part of the Bible. So when you look at wisdom here, when you talk about what we see here, you can understand why people start saying, is this some kind of angelic deity almost? Look, it's a problem from the standpoint of we probably don't understand the context, the fact that we don't understand how this could be described the way it is, and what are the conclusions, what do we take away from this? As I told you, when we look at this kind of literature and these kind of texts, we go, well, there seems to be this Greek influence on it, right? There seems to be this thing that we know from Greek texts and from, again, specifically from, from what exists in what we see in Christianity. As I told you, showed you the line from John, the first line from John chapter 1, right? Is that God created the Word and the Word was with God, right? This famous, this line here. So when we look at this, we start to see where the Greeks would get this concept of logos, of, again, later on, they would say, this is the basis for this is the basis for Jesus being with God at the beginning. Now, of course, it's a little bit difficult because clearly this entity is feminine. Definitely feminine. There's no question. And so, even in the early church, that this is some kind of entity that's maybe not Jesus. So early Christians would argue over what this was. But we do have it from We do have it in the book of Proverbs. So this is why we have a little bit of a interesting text here dealing with our, let me just see. Let's see if it has it in this reference. It doesn't. But yeah. So call this again a pre-existent second person. So we have it here. We have it in this section of Proverbs. Definitely seems to be feminine for people who want to talk about definitely subservient to God. It's not equal to God. How do people rationalize this other than, again, the rabbis talked about it obviously clearly in terms of the Torah. When wisdom is here talking about being there with God at the beginning, this is this concept that the Torah pre-existed creation, that the world was created, the universe was created with the words of Torah. And it's a Torah talking here. As a blueprint for the universe. And again, I don't know what to tell you other than this is part of the Bible. You know, wisdom saying in her words, I was with God when all this was created. It's the Torah. That this is the Torah speaking. This is the Torah speaking. Remember, the Torah is a feminine word too, right? Remember we said, Eitz Chaim Hila Machaziki Ba is a tree of life. We read that in Proverbs.
That it could have been written by Moses.
Yes. And so what Moses did is he copied it down. He wrote down what was there at the beginning. Look, in Kabbalistic texts, it's this idea that there's a Torah that is beyond the Torah that we have. The Torah we have is just kind of like the written version of, but I can't believe I'm going to say this, but the Kabbalistic elements that are the matrix, if you will, that's where the matrix came from. That's where the movie or the concept of the matrix comes from a Kabbalistic notion that there's data behind everything. And the data that's behind everything is the Torah. And the Torah, as it exists, is only some of that data. It's the way that the data manifests itself in the world. But that the data that's actually there, you and I can't see it. I mean, if we get to an elevated state, we can see it. But normally we don't see it. But behind the Torah is the real Torah, which is the data, the information flowing by. To use again the matrix, it's those green numbers that are flying by fast. That's the Torah. And that's what they say is there at the beginning. Yes.
But if it was written down 3,500 years ago, and we know that Earth was created long before that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and so that's why Kabbalists, I sent you that article. That's why Kabbalists will say, yes, because the real Torah, the pre-existent Torah, is the real data behind it. And the Torah that we see is only part of that Torah. It's only the visible part of that Torah. It's only the way that the Torah can manifest itself in the world because it's much bigger. It's all the data behind everything. All the Hebrew letters that are behind all of that. And they pop up. They pop up in certain ways, right? The Hebrew letters pop up in the Torah, and they all line up, and it's all important, and it's all holy. But that's only part of the letters. The only letters that you see popping up in the Torah are what God wants us to see in the written Torah. But the data behind it is already there, which is why the rabbis, to some extent, could have said 2,000 years ago, and they didn't think about it, but they did think about it, but they didn't think about the bigger picture. why they could say that the whole Talmud is the oral Torah. How could they say that's the oral Torah? Because there's other data. There's the data is floating around out there, and it reveals itself through people who are holy enough to reveal it. And so the rabbis who revealed the Talmud were revealing that part of the Torah that wasn't in the written Torah before, that some of them argued never should have been written. The rabbis who argued that we shouldn't have written down the oral Torah argued that the oral Torah was just that. It was only supposed to be oral. It was only supposed to be given by people orally. The transmission should have only been orally.
It's like telephone.
Yeah, but it's also, if the data manifests itself in your mind, or again, that God is giving you this data, the data isn't being imparted to you, and you're not bringing it out on a piece of paper. Look, it makes sense from the standpoint of, again, we talk about it now through the lens of a computer. That's why, again, when the movie The Matrix came out, everyone who knew Kabbalah, that the brothers, the Wachowski brothers, borrowed from Kabbalistic concepts. Everybody knew, who knows Kabbalah, that that's where they got some of their big ideas from, their main ideas, their fundamental ideas for their mythology in that movie. But the idea that all of this is going on because the data is out there and it manifests itself in certain ways is just, again, because we can't comprehend it. We don't see it. It's there, we just don't see it. So, again, when we run a computer program, we don't see the ones and twos. We don't see that, but it's all happening there. It's all happening behind, we don't care. We don't care about it because the way we see it doesn't matter. As long as we see it, we don't really care. As long as the screen is showing what I want it to show, I don't care that it's all binary code. I don't care. And that's what they would say about the Torah. The Torah that we don't see, we don't really care about as long as it manifests itself into trees and people and computers, everything that we see. As long as it manifests itself, we don't care. We don't want to see it.
I was a programmer.
Yeah.
I care. I'm trying to figure out who the programmer of the Torah was. That's God. He cares.
Yeah, but for the most part, even though you understand it, and again, you could say the Kabbalists understood it, they knew what they were talking about, but they also, at the end of the day, couldn't comprehend it. And that's the difference, is that, on most days now you wake up and you're not programming anymore, you're not thinking about it. You don't care. That's what most people do. And you happen to understand it more than most people, but most people don't care. Most people, 99.9% of the people don't care. And so we don't care as long as it appears the way we want it to appear, as long as it's showing as long as the things are coming out the way we want them to come out, we don't really, not even want them to come out, the way we expect them to come out. And so that's why when we see the origins of this in a statement that when Proverbs says, I was there at the beginning as the first of his works of old. First of all, it says that God created wisdom, but it also says, I was there as the stuff was coming forward, as the rest of the stuff was popping up. It's an amazing idea. And it's the beginnings for, again, the kind of mystical explanations for how we have the things that we have. And whether, again, there is something behind everything we see. And that, my friends, is mind-blowing, and it's where we finished. The next line, the next chapter, we're going to pick up next week. We'll be here next week. Good luck, Mike, with your surgery, and we hope that if you're not here with us next week, you'll be watching. So chapter 9, we're going to read. Chapter 9, I thought maybe we'd get to it today. It doesn't matter. It's not as long, but we'll read chapter 9 next. Chapter 9 is the last part of this first part of Proverbs. Chapter 1 through 9, as I said. And then you can see chapter 10 begins, the Proverbs of Solomon. It's another opening, right? It's another book, if you will. It's another collection. But as you saw, each of these collections, each of these teachings is a unit in itself to some extent. And it's probably in some cases, they were collections of sayings that people had that were similar. So we will pick this up next week. And we hope to see you tomorrow night or Friday for Shabbat. Next Wednesday is Hanukkah. I was planning on it, but we may not. I'll have to see. I was planning on it. I did the menorah lighting at 6 o'clock so I could be here on the 25th. But I have a feeling a lot of people can't be here. But we'll do a poll. I did not commit to an answer until we find out this Wednesday. I don't like to talk about it too far in advance because then people get confused and they say, you said there was not going to be a class next week or there is a class next, whatever. So we will make that decision based on what people this Wednesday say. But I don't like to confuse people, and I definitely plan for it of availability because I'm here. Tuesday and Wednesday people don't meet. They don't exist in the same world, except for actually many of you do, but used to be it was a completely different group.
Yeah.
All right, folks, we'll see you later.
Everybody.
Happy Hanukkah if we don't see you
Happy
before.
Hanukkah.
Thank you, guys. Bye-bye, everybody.